The Unabomber. He began his reign of terror almost 18 years ago. Tonight, this former Berkeley professor is being held. But are the professor and the Unabomber one and the same? Here's Nightline's Chris Bury.
The strange story of Theodore Kaczynski begins at this house, where he grew up in the Chicago suburb of Evergreen Park. In high school, he was in the band, biology club, coin club, German club, math club.
I went and got my yearbook out, and he was there. And I remember the face, and I remember a quiet young man.
Quiet, but smart and precocious. Kaczynski earned a scholarship to Harvard, where he graduated at age 20. Only 5 years later, in 1967, Kaczynski had his Ph.D. in math from the University of Michigan. He began a 2-year stint on the faculty at the University of California in Berkeley. Kaczynski quit in 1969. In 1972, he moved to a remote cabin in Stimple Pass, Montana, where he has lived until his apprehension. Tonight, one of the early victims, a Berkeley professor, seemed quietly relieved.
This is the closest they've ever come to naming a name. So I kind of believe it might be true, but I just hope it is true, because I'd hate to see anyone else get hurt.
The FBI believes it has a strong suspect because he fits their profile in so many ways. A highly intelligent loner, academic background, strong ties to the Midwest, where the Unabomber first struck at Northwestern University outside Chicago. In 1978, a campus guard and the next year a student were injured by 2 homemade bombs. They were later tied to a device found on board an American Airlines flight between Chicago and Washington. The device misfired, averting a catastrophe.
It was clear that the same hand had made both of these bombs.
Chris Roney, then the FBI's top explosives expert, first made the connection between the airline bomb and one of the devices at Northwestern.
You look at his techniques of soldering, you look at his selection of components, you look at his, just the level of expertise that's shown in carving or shaping things. And you put all that together, you can arrive at a very individual signature.
That signature was obvious again in 1980 at the suburban Chicago home of Percy Wood, a United Airlines executive injured when he opened a book that arrived in the mail.
Every device has wood of some shape or form incorporated into the device.
There were other tenuous ties among the victims, connections to universities and airlines, hence the nickname Unabomber. Explosives were found at a handful of campuses, including the University of California at Berkeley, where Professor Angelakos picked up a can that exploded in his hands.
The main thing was that I lost the tendons in these fingers, and they have been reconstructed.
3 years later, the Unabomber left another package inside the very same building at Berkeley, where Kaczynski had taught math.
Blast badly hurt 26-year-old graduate student John Hauser.
I also had my Air Force Academy ring on my right ring finger. And when I opened the device, it blew my fingers and the ring off and left an imprint in the wall itself that showed the curvature of the stone, showed the letters of the word Academy, and portions of the ring itself.
In 1985, the Unabomber's busiest year, he sent a bomb to this mailbox at the home of a professor at Michigan, Kaczynski's alma mater. That year, the Unabomber killed for the first time. The bombs were becoming more and more sophisticated.
He spends an awful lot of time working on these devices. A lot of care and an obsessive amount of time working on them.
14 months later, an explosion in Salt Lake City gave investigators their first big break.
There was an eyewitness that was able to give a definitive enough description for an artist to make a drawing.
By now, the search for the Unabomber had become one of the biggest and most expensive in FBI history. But for the next 6 years, the Unabomber would go underground. It was during this time, around 1990, when Theodore Kaczynski's father was stricken with cancer and committed suicide. The Unabomber did not strike again until 1993, when explosive packages injured a computer scientist at Yale and a geneticist in California. Later, the Unabomber sent 2 more bombs that killed. In 1994, Thomas Moser, a New Jersey advertising executive, died opening his mail. And last year, 5 days after Oklahoma City, timber industry lobbyist Gilbert Murray was killed by a bomb at his Sacramento office. Then in June, the Unabomber took a frightening new tack.
Okay, I need to see your picture that day along with his.
For 6 nerve-wracking days, air traffic in California was disrupted and air mail paralyzed. In that time period, the Unabomber had threatened to blow up an airliner leaving Los Angeles in a letter to the San Francisco Chronicle.
And is it a credible threat? Yes, the Unabomber has carried out bombings before.
But the threat never materialized, and the Unabomber was silent until September, when he blackmailed the nation's most influential newspapers.
Today, there's been a wide-ranging debate about 2 of the country's leading newspapers giving in to a terrorist's demands.
The New York Times and Washington Post printed a rambling 35,000-word manuscript that railed against modern technology and ended in this chilling conclusion. In order to get our message before the public with some chance of making a lasting impression, we've had to kill people. That public confession may come up again in court, if indeed the FBI has finally found its man and ended the Unabomber's 18-year reign of terror. This is Chris Bury for Nightline in Washington.